Welcome to Politics After Dark with Rachel. I'm your host, Rachel, and I have with me Joshua Cook. Say hi, Joshua.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. And I also have Kevin Rollins again, everybody's favorite.
You know, Rachel, I'm just going to try to be a little less obnoxious than I normally am because I don't want people to get so upset this time.
No, don't try to be less obnoxious. That's what I love about you. It's part of your charm. And then, of course, there's me. We are waiting for Norman Singleton. He is having some technical issues, but he's going to pop in sometime. And luckily, we have plenty of interesting people to talk to tonight about our very exciting topic. Oh, there's Norm. Norm! There he is. Well, can you hear us yet? I don't think he can hear us yet. So he's working that out. We're going to go ahead and make sure that everybody on my panel has the chat room up. So if you've got that link that I sent you beforehand, if you can go ahead and get the live feed up so that you can see the chat room. Yes, people are seeing us. Charles Kennedy is here. Yay, guest Norman. I guess there's a guest over there named Norman. Awesome, very good. So, first things first, what is everybody drinking? I'll start. I am drinking a beautiful red blend with my Linville Winery wine glass. This is Apothic Dark. If you're familiar with Apothic Red, it is my favorite. It is a red blend, and it's just it's a lot like a Cabernet, but a little bit sweeter. This one is like especially sweet. It's maybe too sweet for my taste. I definitely like it. I don't like it better than Apothic Red. That is what I am drinking. Cheers. Let's go over to Joshua. What are you drinking, Joshua?
Guten Abend. I'm celebrating Oktoberfest. Tomorrow, and I am actually drinking Oktoberfest Marzen Lager from Left Hand Brewing Company out of Colorado, which I would love to visit Colorado soon.
Awesome. It's getting to be ski season. Are you a skier?
It's a beautiful color. It's like an dark amber color.
Yeah, a little bit reddish. Very nice.
Absolutely.
Craft beer, yes. Matt Wowell says craft beer, yay! Yes, we all like craft beer. Kevin,
hey.
You're two-fisting it tonight. What have you got?
Well, I know we had a whole half hour to fill, so I wanted to come prepared. I got the Heineken, and I got the Irish whiskey.
Yes. And which goes first? Like, what's the order of operation? What's the plan?
Well,
what's the
strategy? I need to slow down a little bit. I use the Heineken. If I need to give me some more fuel to the engine, a little more wit, I use the Irish whiskey.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Norm, are you with us yet? I think he is still working on his technological sound and everything. But Norm, last time he joined us, he was, I think, drinking coffee. But, okay, so let's get right into it. The topic tonight is the Ron Paul movement, the state of the Ron Paul movement. Is it dead or dying? Those are your two options. No, I know there's going to be answers anywhere in between. My friend Avens, I asked her before, what her opinion was. She says it's napping. I thought that was pretty genius, but I've just been a little discouraged lately because the Rand Paul campaign is not going exactly as high as I had hoped. The latest poll that I looked at had him down to 2% from, I think, a high of 17. So he's not gaining momentum, he's losing it. I thought after the debate, and a lot of people thought after the debate, the last debate, that Trump was pretty much done. But like Mark Twain in his famous quote, the reports of his demise have been greatly exaggerated, I think. I think people keep trying to call Trump's campaign dead, but again, the polls show him he gained a point, just a point, but still, he's not dead in the water by any means. Ben Carson is up, Carly Fiorina is up, Bush is down. But, Rand is still, if he keeps going this way, he's going to be relegated to the kids' table, and, that a lot of our enthusiasm and the energy that we had during the Ron Paul campaigns in 2008, 2012 seems to be like fizzling out. What do you think? Let's start with Kevin. What do you think?
I think the most unfortunate thing about Rand's poor performance in the poll numbers recently is that it makes people believe that there's less support for libertarian ideas than there really is, rather. And in terms of inside the Republican Party, he's had a lot of attention the last several years as becoming this other pole of the party, the representative of the other pole, the libertarian wing. And again, I think that this performance doesn't really represent how much support that we have. I think that Trump has sucked the energy out of the room. Again, I think that probably the majority of Republican voters don't support Rand Paul because they aren't libertarians. But nonetheless, I think it underrepresents how much strength we have.
Josh, what do you think?
Well, I've been very critical of Rand Paul's campaign, and I actually am going to take a different twist tonight.
Oh, good.
I saw him yesterday, and he's been visiting South Carolina quite often. Of course, we're first in the South, so very important primary in the South. And first visit, I wasn't very impressed. I thought the people that were around him were, not very nice compared to some of the other candidates that I dealt with. This go around yesterday, he came to a local brewery, which is a good start as it is. Host of Beer and Politics. I'm a big fan. Mick Mulvaney, Congressman Mick Mulvaney came out and endorsed him. That's a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw this time with Rand Paul is new energy. Lots of young people came out. I've never seen this many young people at any campaign. A lot of young people. You had Marianne Copenhagen from Liberty Me was there.
Oh, cool.
There was a new thing. There was a new campaign person. Her name is Eleanor, who is she went out her way to be very nice to me. I was really impressed with that. I think there's a reboot. I think there's a 2.0, Rand Paul 2.0.
Awesome.
I think it's important to have the right people around you. And I don't know, maybe he said, you know what, maybe I need to start listening to other voices. I hope that's the truth, because he needs to focus on the strong points. And I think his strong points are reaching out to the millennial voters and being himself and not listening to the political class and consultants, but really focus on his strong points. I saw that in a debate. There's no other candidate that's talking about the failure of our foreign policy. Look at the Syrian refugee crisis right now. Part of that is our failure in the Middle East, the fact that we arm and train these Sunni radicals that just end up becoming ISIS leaders. He's the only candidate that is really talking about those issues. He's the only candidate that's calling out Bush, and we have an article on truthandmedia.com about the hypocrisy of Carly Fiorina saying her daughter died from smoking pot. I mean, just totally fabrication. Makes no sense. But Rand Paul's calling them out.
I hate that kind of pandering, by the way.
She's dangerous. She's worse than Bush. Her hawkish stance on war scares me. She scares me more than Bush.
But what scares me the most about Carly is that she came from the marketing wing of HP and Lucent and moved up to CEO from marketing. So she's going to be an excellent campaigner, and she's proving herself to be, which makes her even more dangerous because she slips in those things, but she's got a way of speaking. She's got a way of presenting herself that's very compelling.
Right, and I interviewed Gary Johnson, who may be running for the Libertarian Party for president again. He does have competition. I actually interviewed today Austin Peterson from the Libertarian Republic.
I had Austin on my show 2 weeks ago.
Very sharp guy. I love his platform, by the way.
Yeah.
But Gary Johnson says that he thinks that Carly has it, that she's going to be the nominee. So I thought it was surprising he said that. But after the last
That's
debate,
interesting.
it could be true. Who knows?
Well, here's my question to bring it back to the sort of the theme of the hour. How libertarian is Carly? I think that I've seen some things she said are they're not quite so hardcore right wing, but she wants to expand the military adventurism, beef up the military spending. I think that by itself is sort of a clue that she's not really that libertarian.
Yeah, did you see this David Stockman piece that I put on my wall about clueless Carly basically presents the case that the military buildup that she called for in her little her little Twitch moment where I want to build all these ships and add all these troops, all that is like an additional $600 billion that we don't have, and her success at HP and Lucid is entirely attributable to riding the tech bubble up. And she made some disastrous business decisions in that post, and she did a terrible job. And the only reason that she did as well as she did was, the bubble. And a lot of people were enabled by that bubble to do just terrible, terrible business things. HP and Lucent, they didn't really invent anything spectacular. They didn't innovate. They didn't do anything deserving of like an elevated stock price. It was entirely loose financing and cheap money from the Fed. So she is very much a crony corporatist. And that's very terrifying. But again, she's very dangerous because she's well-spoken and she can present a case. I mean, look at how she almost burst into tears and talking about her stepdaughter, by the way, not her daughter, her stepdaughter, and her struggles with, I think, bulimia and prescription pills.
Right.
Nothing to do with the drug war, really. Totally unrelated.
Marijuana didn't help the bulimia?
It would have. There's the irony. That's the irony. If she had marijuana,
Mom, I feel hungry.
Okay.
Put that marijuana down.
Marijuana would have saved her. But that's not what she died from. She didn't have a problem with marijuana. Marijuana might have helped her eating disorder and her anxiety or whatever she was going through. Not to make light of it. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, I understand that a step-parent can become very, very attached to their stepchildren. That's not what I meant.
Well, apparently not so attached that they won't calculatedly use it for political points by completely conveying the facts about it. So.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, who is this bearded man who's sitting next to you?
Oh, Jesus. This is Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for your sacrifice.
No,
bless you, my son.
See, he's got the ponytail. Yeah. Sometimes he walks by in the background of my show, and people are like, "Did Jesus just walk by?" One time he did it in a bathroom. He walked by in a bathroom, and people were like, "It was Jesus." It's just Mike.
Just Mike. Or Jesus.
Yeah. My husband, Mike.
Jesus.
Is very much an anarchist. He doesn't vote.
I do not vote.
He's disavowed himself from all political whatsoever.
I do have some thoughts on your topic of the evening, though, which is
go ahead.
Rand Paul. I think what Rand Paul's fall from favor, his plummet in the polls, demonstrates, especially relative to some of the other people, is that the Republican base really is not that interested in small government.
Not really.
They're not really. You know, there's all of these guys have to pay lip service. You know, and before you were asking about Carly Fiorina and how libertarian is she? Because she might have said such and such. Well, they all say such and such. They all try to pander that they're small government, freedom, loving corporatist leeches, but they're not. They're just not. They're just evil, douchebags, basically. And Rand Paul does not resonate with the Republican base because the Republican base is not interested in a small government message. They're looking for a bloodthirsty foreign policy that will go take care of those crummy terrorists that we created, and that's what they want. They want big government. So
I think
that's what we're going to get.
you have to look at Republican voters as through the lens of their main media channel, which is Fox News, and also the big talk radio shows. They're just being fed all of this hate speech and all this red meat that gets people really crazy. And I think that if you again that's part of the problem that we face though now is that for libertarians we go through Fox News too to get our message out because it's not going out anywhere else.
Hey, this can.
Hey, Norm.
Hey, Norm! We hear you!
I think
It's like the Galaxy Hut all over again.
I think well, interestingly, you do see the Trump followers turning on Fox News, and you see libertarians defending Fox News, which is odd considering that 4 years ago we were the ones who were attacking Fox News because of the crummy way they treated Ron. I'm referring to, of course, Congressman Ron Paul, Rand's dad. I think that Mike and Tom Mullen have a point about a large segment of the Republican base. I don't know though if you look at someone like this year is an odd year in that it doesn't. This is sort of an unideological primary because Trump, Carson, and Filarini, or however you pronounce her name, aren't really running prints on ideas. They're running on anger and the outsiders, and it's bizarre to see someone like Rand tagged as an outsider just because he's been in the Senate for what, 4 years, 3 years? I mean, Tard is an insider.
But I want to go back to something that Joshua said earlier about Rand's demeanor, and I think that Rand really did become a Washington senator. I think that behooves us to have a U.S. senator who's libertarian-leaning, but at the same time, again, you get caught up in that, and you listen to Mitch McConnell and whoever else is coming from the RNC to tell you what you should do next, and build your ego up, but it also then does make you an insider.
There is a the counter to that is I would look at what Rand did in May with single-handedly almost blocking the USA Patriot Act with support of grassroots groups like
Sure.
Liberty. We are also about to push a major program, hopefully with Rand's, that will get Rand's audit the Fed bill, which was Ron's audit the Fed bill, voted on. We have you can get information on that, including our matching grant challenge at campaignforliberty.com. You can also read, while you're there, you can also read a blog that contains my pithy observations on the state of
awesome.
which poor Rachel had to suffer through on an hourly or minute-by-minute basis when she slaved in the congressional office.
It was the best part of the job. It was the best. I'm not kidding.
I thought the Pelosi the Pelosi corn forks were the best part of the job. Those of you don't know, when Nancy took over as Speaker, she put in this new environmentally friendly regime in the House cafeterias, and they had these forks, biodegradable forks that were made out of corn. And when you say biodegradable, they would degrade in the middle of your meal. If the soup was too hot, your spoon would literally melt. The only good thing about it was since it was made out of corn, you could just go ahead and eat the spoon. Everything else, and you got a little
Great
more
fiber content
that way. So let's not pretend that Nancy Pelosi never did anything to promote efficiency in government.
And now you're regular.
Oh, very good.
If I can jump in here, I think so. You're going back to your question: is the Ron Paul movement dead? I don't think so. I think we need to be a little more optimistic. Rand Paul did win the Mackinac straw poll in Michigan. Of course,
something.
It's interesting. The media, CNN, even though Rand Paul won, they said how well. Some of the headlines were like how well Carly did. They didn't mention the fact that Rand Paul actually won the straw poll. It just goes to shows to the media bias. But I think another strategy that Rand Paul could take is just what. Maybe laying low is not a bad thing, because look at the GOP. Look how they're crashing and burning. Scott Walker was leading the polls at one time, and now he was doing so bad he's out now. And I think if you actually listen to what Ben Carson says, some of his policies, his own immigration policy, for example, he talks about, well, we should let Mexicans work in the fields for a certain time and then making them citizens. I mean, isn't that a racist comment? I mean, how can he get away with that? I mean, this is unbelievable to me. I mean, how racist a statement is that? We need to bring back indentured servants to be slaves before they can become citizens.
Joshua, we're going to have the greatest feudal society the world has ever seen.
I mean, this is insane. I mean, but the media doesn't even pick up on that. I don't know.
They'll pick up on it as soon as he is nominated.
They will.
The next day,
pick up on
they will be running it non-stop on a loop.
That's true.
After he's nominated.
They did pick up on his Muslim comment, and I think that actually when a lot of supporters of closer to open borders or liberal immigration reform do talk about earned path for citizenship, and they do mean stay here for a few years, work, show, I think his phraseology was wrong, but within the mainstream, I'm not talking about the purist libertarian position here. I'm saying within the mainstream of the immigration debate, I don't think what he meant was that far off, but I think that what that shows is that he may be a loose cannon in that he will say things that you have to parse and sit down and think about, and then you say, okay, maybe it's not as insane, offensive as it first sounded, but if you're a campaign manager, you don't want someone who you have to come out and constantly clarify what they're saying. And that's the weakness of Dr. Carson's campaign. With Trump,
and one could say Trump too, but it doesn't seem to be hurting him ever.
Apologize. He calls you an idiot and says you're stupid, and then says that he's going to give you. But nonetheless, even though you're stupid, under his administration, you'll still get twice of the great things of the things that make America great.
Gonna be huge, huge.
More bacon, more coffee.
Yes, we forgot to ask you what you're drinking. Are you drinking coffee again?
I'm actually drinking coffee.
Norm.
Is it Irish coffee?
Irish coffee, please.
Gentleman doesn't tell.
I am disappointed. I'm disappointed that when you look at Bernie Sanders, you see these huge crowds that follow Bernie Sanders. I wish that the same crowds could be following Rand Paul right now.
Well, who else have they got to follow?
I have said before.
Listen,
I have said before that Bernie Sanders is the Ron Paul of economically ignorant people. And he has an extremely similar movement building behind him of crazy, economically illiterate nut jobs. It's really frightening. It
is frightening. It is frightening.
It's terrifying.
Is also like that. He's sort of the Bernie Sanders of the right, with a lot more nationalism and nativism, but he's also he for a business. Maybe it's not surprising that a businessman is a crony capitalist, or a businessman is a authoritarian corporatist, because that's how he made his money. And I actually think part of his appeal is that he's taken his past as a cronyist who used eminent domain, who bought and sold politicians for political favors, and
brags about it
into a plus, because he says, A, I can't be bought because I was a buyer, because I was a buyer when I was part of the donor class, and B, I understand how this system works. I'm the guy you want to clean out the stables of D.C. because I was the one I was the one shoveling the manure in there for a while.
I want to get back to one thing that somebody said about laying low, and I think that is actually what I hope Rand is doing right now, is just laying low and letting Trump fizzle out, which I have to believe somehow, someday, people will wake up to, Trump and just, and then there will be all that more oxygen. Like, my mother finally said, Trump lost me. He insulted Rand, and that was not nice. Now, I don't like Rand's foreign policy. He's too isolationist, and I just want him to smack her. But, but
my response to that, though, is...
She should know better. But... Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm sorry. No, my question about that is the staying power in terms of staying on the radar, staying in the debates, keeping the money flowing in from donors. Yeah. Maybe Norm knows more about them than the rest of us do, but I would be interested to know what the current fundraising looks like for the campaign.
I'm not sure. I mean, I know that I think though that they have a lot of enthusiastic supporters. They've been building a good ground game. I think they started building their ground game in 2013, back from the remnants of the Ron Paul 2012 machine, and build it outward. They're capable of playing a long game, and one of the things to keep in mind is that I saw someone posted today polling numbers from the 2012 cycle today. Herman Cain was in the front with like 30-some%. Ron was back with 10%. I think Santorum was down in the low teens, and as we all remember, Santorum surged from behind in December, and Newt and
he was surging all over the place, really.
And you remember too that
it was a big mess.
It was tough to get him out of the race. It took a little club soda.
The Iowa straw poll, which they had in August, and they didn't do one this year because they were afraid of Rand winning, and that was before the summer of Trump. Ron came in a close second, and to Michelle Bachmann, statistically tied, and they immediately began ignoring him. Jon Stewart did a wonderful bit on that, which I'm sure many people remember. But Bachmann had her time in the sun. Herman Cain, Santorum, Gingrich. Then Ron ended up finishing close third in Iowa, close second in New Hampshire, outperforming all expectations. We have a good infrastructure from that. There's a strong liberty wing in the Republican Party, and one thing is that wing is actually growing. I think it was Jack Hunter made a comment, and I think this is true, which is that it's very tough to find someone under 30 who's a hardcore Trump supporter. Most
I haven't met any.
They're either with Rand, or if they're not with Rand because of concerns about social issues or foreign policy or whatever, they're with Cruz, who I know is not a libertarian by any stretch of the imagination, but he's shown some signs of not being a bomb the world, invade everybody on foreign policy. As he puts it, he's trying to find a middle ground between Rand and Lindsey Graham.
Well, he's no Fiorina.
Yeah, and that's another thing about Fiorina that I find interesting, is that unlike Cruz and Rand, who are critics of the surveillance state, Fiorina, the so-called, or however you pronounce it, the so-called outsider from the business world, she has a long history when she was at Hewlett-Packard of collaborating with the NSA and the CIA to build the surveillance state. She is not just the worst on foreign policy. I mean, she makes Lindsey Graham seem like Ron Paul, but she also really wants everyone to
after that.
That's a statement right there. One thing, if I can jump in, going back to Sanders, one thing that I have to give Sanders credit for is that he's really not going after his party's nominations. He's talking directly to the people, the American people.
Well, he's a populist.
I know his policies are flawed, but think about it. He's promising free health care. He's promising free education. He's promising a living wage for ordinary struggling families, ordinary American people. That's what matters to them. They're struggling right now.
Of course. This is.
And
listen,
he doesn't talk about the fact that we're going to, tax your income by 70% like they do in like European countries. But the thing is, he doesn't give a shit about Democrat Party. He doesn't care about the Democrat Party. And I think that's why there's huge crowds, going to his events. He's not really going after, the other candidates. He's talking directly to the American people. You know what? Rand Paul needs to do. Rand Paul screw the Republican Party. I'm talking directly to the American people. This is how I'm going to change it. I can't promise you. I can't be Santa Claus to you and promise you utopia. But what I can promise you is freedom. That's what Rand Paul.
He's just the Barack Obama of 2016.
Here's the thing. I read a fascinating thing today. This was a piece that was written supposedly, so for all I know, is completely fictional glurge, and it was not true. But this was a piece that was written by a survivor of the Axis side of World War II. And she was not in Germany. She was in Austria. And she reminded us that Austria, the German tanks did not have to roll in to Austria. Austria invited the Germans in. They had a referendum to basically give their entire country over to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, and it passed like 98%. It was unanimous. They were in a deep recession, a depression. Unemployment was huge. They were desperate and miserable, and they overwhelmingly democratically voted to invite Adolf Hitler in. And he came in, and man, he cleaned up the streets. He put everyone to work. He started giant jobs programs. Everybody got free education. Everybody got free health care. And over the course of 5 years, it slowly, incrementally transformed into a totalitarian state where the government literally took over all of the schools. Basically, education was replaced in Austria with 2 hours of political indoctrination, and the rest of the day was calisthenics and sports.
Oh, God.
That was education, but it was free.
Common Core, was that the inspiration for Common Core?
It could be. Socialized medicine. Everybody had free health care. It immediately disastrously fell apart, as you would expect. It's free. Everybody lined up the doctors. The doctors had a fixed salary. They were controlled by the government. Doctors would show up in the morning. There's 40 people waiting for them before they even walk in the door. It was a disaster. There was rationing. You had to wait a year for your elective procedures, and it got worse and worse. Your income tax went up to 80%. The health and safety and consumer protection
Rachel, look at your face.
regulations.
It looks like Michael does this spiel like every day at like.
No.
The occupational health and safety and consumer protection regime under the Nazis is something that our government aspires to. They would go into.
You see why I need cheering up?
They would go into little cafes.
Rachel, what happened to the Austrians?
They would tell the owners of the cafes, you can't have square tables because somebody might bump themselves in the corners. So you have to replace all of your square tables with round tables, and just crazy onerous regulations.
That's a good thing. That's a benefit.
And of course, these small businesses would go out of business, and the government, the government-run or government-connected large businesses would benefit. And it was the takeaway that I got from this, all of the point by point, all of the wonderful things that Adolf Hitler brought to Austria are exactly what Bernie Sanders is promising to his throngs of, what do we want? Free shit. What do we not understand? Economics. Those people are the 98% of Austrians that voted in, demanded Adolf Hitler. I mean,
but it's been happening here for a long time. I mean, there's federal regulations.
Take your drink.
Back in actually in the 90s, a friend of mine made this point that about next time someone says America's a free country, remind them that under, I think this was accurate, under federal regulations, a mother can't hold her newborn baby in her arms when driving back from the hospital because they have to have a car seat. Car seats are probably good things. You know, if I had an infant, I would want a car. I might want them in a car seat, but shouldn't that be the decision of a parent, not the federal government? And if the federal government's dictating that, how are we free?
Yeah, what else can they dictate?
You know, you talk about tables in restaurants. Well, under the Bloomberg, de Blasio, and even under conservative icon Rudy Giuliani's New York City, there's silly regulations like that passed, and these things start the state, local level, and they go up to the national level. Michelle Obama's school lunch programs. There's all sorts of things like that right now, and I think all Sanders is the accumulation of that in American politics.
Okay, I have to stop you because Josh, you have a fan. He's coming up as guest Silva, and he wants me to ask you in the chat room, what do you think the Rand Paul campaign strategy should be going forward? Very quickly, if you've got any ideas. What should they do?
Well, I think that he needs to be a standout. He needs to be, have more bold rhetoric. It's like I said, though, I think it's going back to what Sanders is doing, why he's drawing so much crowd. It's not really that, these candidates in the GOP, it's not that Trump has great ideas, it's the fact that he's not a politician. Rand needs to stop being a politician and start talking to the people about real issues that the average person is going through. Talk more about drug reform. I'm glad he did that. I mean,
me too.
I'm glad he talked about that. I know so many people, when I ask them what issues are important to you, this failure of this drug war, look, why don't you just come out and say, look, I want to legalize cannabis. I mean, or I want to do something like that. Think about the money that we can save. Going back to Gary Johnson, he has a very, very good point. Look at Colorado, a template for every state. What happens if every state legalized cannabis?
That's why we have states. That's why states have sovereignty, is because every state is supposed to be a little laboratory to try different things. And
talk about the 10th Amendment. The thing is, the bottom line in Boulder, Colorado, people are not, despite what Carly thinks, people are not dying of smoking pot. Okay, don't hear that. Most of the cannabis use are edibles. They're brownies. I mean, you don't hear about some guy like killing his wife because he smoked too much pot.
But I saw it in a movie. It was made in 1939. It was called
The only thing they're worried
Madness. I saw it on TV. It happened.
The only thing a person after they smoke pot is worried about is like going to like the nearest Taco Bell. They're not thinking about killing people, okay?
How many children have been killed in those car rides?
That's why I don't like that. It makes me hungry.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem.
Think about millions of dollars that states are spending on the prison systems. Think about the private prisons.
Yeah.
You want to talk about slavery? You want to talk about a civil rights issue?
Prison labor.
The judicial. We have to reform this prison system. We have to reform the drug reform. If he talks about those issues, I don't care about Republicans. Go back and let's speak to the American people, because if you get talked to directly to the American people, guess what? They're going to register to vote. Rand Paul needs to expand his base. He needs to expand on his father's base.
But don't you think he needs to get back to his base? That was sort of the gist that I got from the email that I'm sure all of us received today, with Ron Paul as the sender, and it was a Rand Paul 2016 email. But it had all of these pictures, and this Norm, this is what was so interesting to me is when he was gearing up for his campaign, even back in 2012, Rand was trying to sort of differentiate himself from his father. He's his own man. But now it seems like he's trying to win back the Ron Paul base, and like the email today seemed to really signify that with 2 pictures of Rand and Ron together. It's like they're trying to come back together. And I think that's smart.
I think it is smart, and I think, honestly, Rachel, what you're doing, talking about this issue right now, I think the campaign's listening. I've wrote about it. I've been critical of his campaign in the past. I think the more we talk about the issue and we're sending the message to his campaign, I think it's making a difference, and I do see a difference in the campaign. I mean, just when I spoke to Rand Paul, he was very nice. His campaign staff were different. They had a different tone. 2 activists, 2 Ron Paul activists, they're reaching out. I think there is. Rand Paul
need us. They need the energy of the grassroots. Maybe they're realizing that now.
Has Rand Paul shaken his campaign? Is Jesse Benton still working for the campaign?
No.
He got indicted.
No.
Well, I know he got indicted, but I didn't know he was still working there.
He was working for a super PAC, the last I heard, which is sort of disavowed from any official connection. So, I mean, he can raise money for whoever he likes if he wants to, right, Norm?
No, the super PAC was officially endorsed by Rand or something like that. I'm not really sure what that is, but that's what Jesse was doing.
You're not allowed to talk about it. That's okay. Well, I don't know either.
Jesse's a friend of mine.
Another thing.
I just don't want to discuss that case.
That's okay.
What was whether or not the campaign team as a whole has been reshuffled, or if there is any word on the direction internally. They are going to try some new stuff.
As far as I know, there's not been any great reshuffling. I mean, again, I think they have a plan and they're sticking to it, and I think. I will say I was very impressed by Rand's debate performance on the last Wednesday. He did a really good job of differentiating himself from foreign policy and on drug policy. Mm-hmm. I think he showed a reasonable side on foreign policy that's very important. Oddly enough, but
yet again, it didn't help him in the polls. In fact, he went down, according to the most recent polls. But unfortunately.
But polls go up and down, and I think it's true that this is still early. Again, remember in 2012 we went through all these flavors of the week, and it was always going to be somebody other than Romney, and it ended up being Romney. It ended up being Ron walking into the convention with a huge swath of delegates. And by the way, that is one of the great ironies of the Trump problem for the GOP, is that in order to make sure that no dissident candidate ever walked into the convention controlling delegates who were, while they were bound to vote for the nominee, were openly hostile to him because they supported another candidate, they passed those awful rules giving basically the front runner control after Iowa and New Hampshire of the delegate selection process.
Yeah.
Really, like, making the party less open to new ideas, less open to new voices, making it a consultant-driven, money-driven show in 2016. I mean, that was the goal. And the guy who could benefit from that could be Donald Trump, because if he wins Iowa and New Hampshire with the leads that he's currently polling, I know that's unlikely, but let's say it happens, he might be unstoppable, and it might be because of Reince Priebus and Haley Barbour and their clever attorneys and the little dirt.
I would say it would serve them right, but unfortunately, it would serve us wrong.
Yeah. Okay, really quick, we're way over time.
It's gonna be awesome.
We're way over time, but really quick, just to wrap up, I want to ask one last question and give everybody like a minute-ish to respond. But I do want to mention before I go into this, everybody, if you could share the archive. this is live right now, so we're enjoying the chat room, and you guys are just cracking me up, and I appreciate your feedback and everything. But if you could share the YouTube that's going to be produced almost immediately after we stop, and then invite people to come and watch in 2 weeks when we come on again, that would be awesome. Yay! Because the more viewers I have, the harder I work, and the better the show is. So, my question to all of my panelists is, before we go, is there going to be, your prediction, a Rand Paul second wind? And if not, is there some reason for optimism beyond this campaign? Like, what's the long game? Is there going to be a second wind? What's the long game? Just real quick, I'll start with Kevin. We haven't heard from you in a second. So, Kevin, go first.
It's been far too long since I heard my own voice. I'd like to think that Rand will get a second wind. I don't know precisely. I don't know all the internal dynamics. I don't know how much money he has and what the. I mean, I'd like to take solace in what Norm said about their fundraising program. I think that the libertarian movement on the whole is quite strong. Obviously, the Koch brothers are shelling out a lot of money to support a lot of libertarian outreach. You know, and some good things are happening from that. I think that the Ron Paul, the networks of Ron Paul supporters who know each other, including people like all of us who've known each other through all this stuff, those things still exist, and I think as long as we are keeping our social networks going, and keeping the conversation going, and we keep reading books and we keep arguing policy with people, our message is getting out there. So I don't think that just because we don't win one presidential nomination, the movement is dead and gone. I think we're still here and we're still strong.
Awesome. Okay, Josh, I'll go to you next.
I think so. Your question is, does he have a second win? I think yeah. But the question is, does he want to be a Mitch McConnell Republican, or does he want to be a radical? Does he want to challenge the establishment? I think what would really really help him in the polls. And I asked him this yesterday in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Would he be willing to go to a town hall event with Bernie Sanders and talk about real issues? Right now, he's not given any time to really express his views. The bottom line is the GOP, the way their debate schedule, it's all rigged for the establishment. Same thing with the DNC. It's all rigged to help Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders is frustrated. Okay? There's a petition right now on truthandmedia.com, and it's going viral, and it's asking Rand Paul to go to a town hall style forum with Bernie Sanders. And I think that's really going to help him in the polls. He needs to do something radical. He needs to do something different. He needs to raise against the machine. If he does that, if he's willing to do that, I think people are going to see him as not an insider Washington machine. He's going to be seen as an outsider who really wants to change Washington, who really wants to help the American people.
Okay. I'm going to ask Mike to answer next, and then Norm, I'm going to give you the last word.
I'm a cynic, and I think that Rand Paul is certainly capable of a second win. Absolutely, certainly capable of a second win, and I think that were that to occur, it would be torpedoed in every way possible. I mean, the same old tricks that we're all familiar with that are obvious to us, like leaving only one person out of the poll when you display the results of the poll on Fox News, or when you have hit pieces that are written, or you have a panel of 4 people discussing how terrible Rand Paul's foreign policy is. It's just over and over and over, and the media concentration is such that we all saw it. Ron Paul was not going to be allowed. He was not in the club, and all guns came out blazing. And if Rand Paul were to differentiate himself and be that radical that all of us want to see, then he would be shut down because he is not in the club.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality. And I gotta go check on a kid.
Yeah, we have a Wiley fussing. So Norm, what are your thoughts?
I think Rand Paul definitely is capable of, and I believe he will get a second wind. I think that his ground game is really could surprise a lot of people. I think that as more candidates fall and he will stand, he will, just by process of attrition, begin to get more media attention. And I think that whether or not he is, and even if he's not the nominee, he is still likely to retain his Senate seat. Very important. I think that the Liberty movement right now is strong. I think Campaign for Liberty, the organization I'm working for, we've actually had some fairly good successes this year. Like I said, we're hoping to get another vote on, we should get another vote and will get another vote on Audit the Fed this fall, even if we have to drag a certain senator not named Rand from Kentucky kicking and screaming to make that vote happen. We helped Rand change the debate on the Patriot Act renewal from how crappy compromises or fig leaf compromises will they give us to pretend that they actually care about civil liberties, to should we accept the reform bill, or should we hold out for full repeal? And full repeal is now actually somewhat serious. In the House, we have more members of Congress like Thomas Massie, Justin Amash, who are serious about individual liberty across the board, challenging the welfare state and the warfare state and the Fed. Thomas Massie just reintroduced some raw milk bills that actually have over 10 original co-sponsors. And as Rachel remembers, when Ron did that, we were sort of treated as an eccentric thing. But now the idea that freedom means you have the right to drink raw milk is actually not so much of a outlier idea in D.C. Liberty Me, and other great educational vehicles are springing up. The largest youth group in the country right now in terms of politicals is Young Americans for Liberty. Students for Liberty also is doing wonderful work and great work on building an international movement. So I don't think that whatever your interest is, whether you're in politics, policy, academia, journalism, blogging, I think you can look around and you could see that while we will have setbacks, there's a lot of hope. And as someone who came on board in the Ron Paul team in 1995, I can tell you from my point of view, it looks a whole lot better than it did 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, thank you for saying that, Norm.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. That is a very good point. Like you've been at this a lot longer than I have, than probably most people watching have. A lot of people were brought on board by the Ron Paul campaigns either in 2008 or 2009. And like you've been at this a long time and you've seen progress. Like
Rachel, you and I have been around for 13, 14 years, and it was nothing like it today.
Yeah, I've been involved in libertarian politics and the liberty movement for a while.
Kevin, I remember when you and I used to sit at the dearly departed Jay's Saloon.
That's right.
And in the aughts with a few other libertarians, and just bemoan the fact that there was a handful of us who opposed the welfare state and the warfare state, because during the Bush years, Republicans gave lip service to opposing the welfare state while voting for entitlements and big budgets. And of course, those few liberals who gave lip service to peace, when it came right down for it, they voted with the neocons because they either were scared or they had their own vision of internationalism that they were hoping that someone like Obama would come in and fulfill.
Yeah. No, we were screaming into the wind basically, and there was no army. There was just a few of us.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep, I remember that feeling. And then like getting so excited because somebody said the word libertarian on TV. Oh my gosh. I mean that was the big deal. I mean, I'm toot my own horn here for a second, but like when I did the calendar back in 2002, you know, like O'Reilly was talking to a libertarian. Oh my gosh, it was such a big deal.
That was pretty cool. I remember that.
That was great. And then, like, we went on to accomplish so many bigger things, and then now it just seems like we're sort of at a lull. So, I mean, I hope we're not dispersing and dying away. I hope what we're doing is getting our second wind, and we've got to imagine, like, the next wave and, like, what's coming. And so, yes, you guys have, you've encouraged me. You encouraged me. This guy will beat me down later.
The Austrians, Rachel, the Austrians suffered greatly for their lack of understanding of economics.
Okay. Thank you all for joining me. I'm going to wrap it up now, and I will see you guys, like, viewers, and you guys hopefully again in another 2 weeks. And I don't know what the show is going to be about. I have no idea, but Jeffrey Tucker has tentatively agreed to be on. He was going to be on, but he's talking to Google. He's talking to Google. Isn't that cool? He's on a plane. But anyway, so thank you all for joining me, and I'm going to wrap it up. Goodbye. Don't forget to share the show. The YouTube is coming, and you can see an archive, and bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Norm.
Good night and good.
Both the engine, you know, a little more wit. I use the Irish whiskey.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Norm, are you with us yet? I think he is still working on his technological sound and everything. But Norm, last time he joined us, he was, I think, drinking coffee. But, okay, so let's get right into it. The topic tonight is the Ron Paul movement, the state of the Ron Paul movement. Is it dead or dying? Those are your two options. No, I know there's going to be answers anywhere in between. My friend Avens, I asked her before, you know, what her opinion was. She says it's napping. I thought that was pretty genius, but I've just been a little discouraged lately because the Rand Paul campaign is not going exactly as high as I had hoped. The latest poll that I looked at had him down to 2% from. Welcome to Politics After Dark with Rachel. I'm your host, Rachel, and I have with me Joshua Cook. Say hi, Joshua.
Hey guys, it's thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. And I also have Kevin Rollins again, everybody's favorite.
You know, Rachel, I'm just going to try to be a little less obnoxious than I normally am because I don't want people to get so upset this time.
No, don't try to be less obnoxious. That's what I love about you. It's part of your charm. And then, of course, there's me. We are waiting for Norman Singleton. He is having some technical issues, but he's going to pop in sometime. And luckily, we have plenty of interesting people to talk to tonight about our very exciting topic. Oh, there's Norm. Norm! There he is. Well, can you hear us yet? I don't think I think a high of 17. So he's not gaining momentum, he's losing it. I thought after the debate, and a lot of people thought after the debate, the last debate, that Trump was pretty much done. But like Mark Twain in his famous quote, the reports of his demise have been greatly exaggerated, I think. I think people keep trying to call Trump's campaign dead, but you know, again, the polls show him he gained a point, just a point, but still, he's not dead in the water by any means. Ben Carson is up, Carly Fiorina is up, Bush is down, but you know, Rand is still if he keeps going this way, he's going to be relegated to the kids' table, and you know that. A lot of our enthusiasm and the energy that we had during the Ron Paul campaigns in 2008 and 2012 seems to be like fizzling out. What do you think? Let's start with Kevin. What do you think? He can hear us yet. So he's working that out. we're going to go ahead and make sure that everybody on my panel has the chat room up. So if you've got that link that I sent you beforehand, if you can go ahead and get the live feed up so that you can see the chat room. Yes, yes, people are seeing us. Charles Kennedy is here. Yay, guest Norman. I guess there's a guest over there named Norman. Awesome, very good. So, first things first, what is everybody drinking? I'll start. I am drinking a beautiful red blend with my Linville Winery wine glass. This is Apothic Dark. If you're familiar with the Apothic Red, it is my favorite. It is a red blend, and it's just it's a lot like a Cabernet, but a little bit sweeter. This one is like especially sweet. It's maybe too sweet for my taste. I definitely like it. I don't like it better than Apothic Red. That is what I am drinking. Cheers. Let's go over to Joshua. What are you drinking, Joshua?
Guten Abend. I'm celebrating Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest tomorrow, and I am actually drinking Oktoberfest Marson Lager from Left Hand Brewing Company out of Colorado, which I would love to visit Colorado soon.
Awesome.
So,
it's getting to be ski season. Are you a skier?
It's a beautiful color. It's like an dark amber color.
Yeah. A little bit reddish. Very nice.
Absolutely.
Craft beer, yes. Matt Wowell says craft beer, yay! Yes, we all like craft beer. Kevin,
Hey.
you're two-fisting it tonight. What have you got?
Well, I know we had a whole half hour to fill, so I wanted to come prepared. I got the Heineken and I got the Irish whiskey.
Yes, yes. And which goes first? Like, what's the order of operation? What's the plan?
Well,
What's the
I need
strategy?
to slow down a little bit. I need to slow down a little bit. I use the Heineken if I need to give me some more fuel.